without further ado, welcome to the Built Different podcast. I'm David Weiss, your host, and this is my brother Sam Weiss. And joining the bearded group today is my good friend, longtime friend, Jason Smith. Jason, we're so glad you could be here with us today.
Yeah, thanks. I'm excited to be here.
Jason and I were up early this morning, and he called me. He's like, I couldn't sleep, so we talked for an hour, and I just said, hey, we're going to do a podcast. Are you up for that tonight? And he's like, yeah, sure. So
Brilliant.
Last minute.
Let's do it.
Yeah, Jason, so let me introduce Jason just a little bit. Jason and I, we have worked at like 3 or 4 different companies together or something, and we're, I think I found in Jason a kindred spirit from a developer perspective and has so much experience. And the last company we worked together at was a fintech startup that we did called Elements. And now he's working at a financial advisory firm called Mercer.
Mercer Advisors, yeah.
Mercer Advisors, yep. And then I'm doing this AI startup, Pallium. And anyway, while we were talking, we just started talking about AI. So today is going to be a little bit focused on some technical stuff that we think would be interesting to share with the world. And so just to begin, to kick it off, Jason, what was your introduction to this whole AI thing? Like, how did that go? What was your exposure and experience there?
Yeah, so I honestly, I think that story starts back like another decade with the iPhone. And there's a reason for that, but when I got my first iPhone, my iPhone 3G, right? I just thought this thing's going to change the world. Like It was at that time we were thinking about developing for BlackBerry. You have to like host your own server and all this stuff, and it's just kind of a nightmare. And then I got the 3G, and I immediately went to the president of the company. And I was like, we have to develop for this thing. And just because I thought it was going to change the world. And so now, like, fast forward to what was it, like November of 22, I think, is when ChatGPT came out. And I had that exact same experience all over again. Like, I thought that was a once-in-a-lifetime experience to feel that, but all over again, I was like, holy cow, this is going to change the world as soon as I started using ChatGPT. So that's where kind of I fell in love with it, started playing with it, started playing with like doing my own little models with Andre's, his tutorials and stuff like that. And it's just been history since then.
Healthy. Yeah, that's awesome. So it was ChatGPT 3 was that moment in 2022, 23. When was that?
Yeah, I think it was the tail end of 22, I think.
Yeah.
It's been so long now. I can't remember, but
yeah, it feels totally different. What was your exposure? So it was like this big aha moment. How did you start using it initially, and kind of like what was your like journey of discovery in terms of using AI in your day-to-day work?
Yeah, I mean, the first experience was just like eye-opening, and immediately the thoughts are running through my head, like, wow, like what can you do with this? Like I was exploring like writing a book with it. I was exploring writing code with it. I was exploring collaborating with it, brainstorming with it. Like it was just everything, because I just wanted to see where the boundaries were, right? Just push the boundaries. So soon after that, I started writing my own. Like I wrote a crawler to go out and crawl the website and collect information in order to create embeddings and be able to ask ChatGPT about that information that I had just finished doing the embeddings for and stuff like that. So started playing with like the deeper side of it, and then it just kind of spread to my day job, which is primarily programming, and it's gotten really good at programming. And so that's just been a constant for the last 2 years, is just working with it in the context of programming, trying to make it, better and better.
That's awesome. Give us if if you could give it a go, and then we'll get more technical, but just for the audience who's not like maybe deep into AI, what is it? How does it work? What's the like layperson's summary for, what this technology is and how does it work?
Yeah, so the way that I like to think about it is, or talk about it, is just in prediction, right? Like if I say like I'm going to the, like, what would you say is the next word? It's like maybe not so obvious, right? But if I said I put my best Sunday clothes on and I'm going to the, you'd probably say, oh, church, right? Like it becomes a little bit more obvious what it is that the next word is, and that's all AI is. It just like predicts. They use tokens, but you could just think about it in words. It just predicts whatever the next word is, and it predicts the next word and the next word, and it just does it. It literally does it one word at a time. It's just doing this little prediction algorithm, and that's something that makes it so magical for me, because most things, when you like peel back the curtain and you look behind the curtain, the magic is kind of lost. You see how the trick is done, and the magic is just lost. With AI, it's like the complete opposite. When you peel back the curtain and you see how it actually works, you're like, how does it work so good? Like, how is it producing this content when it's literally just predicting what the next word should be? It's crazy. It's crazy to me.
Oh, that is totally
So
crazy.
I'm kind of curious. I'm not a software guy. I'm a hardware guy, but I've worked with software guys for a while. And in the last like year and a half, I've gotten into the vibe coding, and I've been able to create things that like are suit my purposes and seem to be reliable enough for what I'm trying to do. And so I guess I'm curious. As I talk to different senior developers, I get a different breadth of opinions. Some of them are pretty anti using these tools, and others lean in heavy and are trying to figure out how to use the tools in the tasks that they're best suited for. I'm curious, what's your kind of take? Are you like in Claude Code all day, just reading its output, or are you doing like tab complete? Or are you just brainstorming and then like writing the code yourself? What's your kind of workflow with these tools right now?
Yeah. I actually find this to be like a really fascinating subject, because humans are very egocentric by nature, right? So like at Elements, kind of all of the developers jumped on board with AI. It started with Copilot completions and it moved on from there. And so I kind of had this thing in my head that like, oh, developers love AI. And then as I got out of Elements and into more, I saw this like dichotomy. Like there's developers that hate it, that are like, if you use AI, like why do you even program? You hate code, obviously. You know what I mean? And yeah, and I'm like, well, because there's more reasons to want to code, right? I love the idea of creating things, and so in any case, there's this huge kind of gap between senior level programmers that think AI's, stealing their job and they hate it and it's taking the fun out of everything. And then on the other side is me. I'm on the complete opposite of that. I'm like, how far can I push AI? What can I do with AI? So yeah, I'm in Claude Code every single day. I'm on the max 5x plan. I think often about bumping it up to the 20x because I hit my limits.
I did that for one. I have actually done that. I'm hardcore Claude Code. That's my daily driver too. But I've been on the upper end of that for a month when I was really going hard at it because I was running out of tokens. Now with the newest models, they've gotten cheaper and better. And so like now I'm just on I'm not at the 5x plan. I'm just at the $100 plan, not the 10.
Yeah. Like I've actually thought about rearranging my workday to be in like these 5-hour blocks. So you work until you're out of tokens, and then you break until your 5-hour time lapses, and you get new tokens, and then you go back to work. So
okay, explain. My daughter just asked me this. She's like, Dad, what's vibe coding? How would you describe vibe coding? It's kind of this meme in the thing. Like how would you describe that for someone? Because not everyone understands that.
Yeah, it is kind of a meme, which I think is sad, but also like somewhat accurate, right? Because there's in this divide that we kind of talked about, there's like people that don't know how to code, that are writing code, right? And then there's like these senior developers that don't want to write code, and they're usually laughing at the vibe coders because they're like, you're just writing crap that I'm going to have to fix for you anyway, right? And but there's this, and we could talk about it in a minute, but there's like this really nice place in the middle where I think I hang out. But vibe coding itself is kind of like, it's coding without caring about the code. So it's primarily you're having the AI generate something, whether it's like a website or an app or something like that. You're not really looking at the code. You're looking at the output. So it would be like, what does the web page look like? And identifying problems that you might see, like bugs or things like that. And then going back to the AI and saying, hey, here's what I noticed. Here's these things that are not correct. Can you fix that? And it's just a cycle of doing that without necessarily worrying about what the code looks like or how the code is structured or, those kinds of things.
So, so hold on, take that to the next level. What you're saying, so I think that was a really good description of vibe coding because that's where I live. And it's like, I mean, there are like little things that once I understand little architectural bits, I'll be like, I don't want to do it that way. Go do it this other way. But in general, I'm like looking at like the web page or whatever and saying, change this stuff, right? So you're not doing that. You're prompting it and then
Correct.
actually reading its output and evaluating whether you want to incorporate that, into your code or modify it in some way. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's different levels of that. And I wouldn't say I'm at the level where I'm reading all of the output. But it's more of like in a director role of my code base, I know how I want it to look. Mm-hmm. So while I might not be reading every line of code that comes from the AI, I am orchestrating the way that the code looks and the way that it's structured. So I might notice in some of my review that a certain pattern is not being followed. So I'll spin up an AI whose sole responsibility is to evaluate the code base on these 5 criteria. And then it'll go and it'll give me feedback on like, oh, here's all the places where we're breaking that pattern. And then I can hand that back to AI and say, hey, we're breaking our pattern in these places, like go and fix that. So I'm kind of like playing at kind of a higher level of the orchestration and not really deep in the code. And the reason that is just speed and efficiency. Like AI can write so much more code than I can. I mean, it can write more code than anyone, and that's why people say it's just slop. But like there's kind of that, I was saying there's this sweet spot in the middle, I think, where you can leverage the speed and adaptability of the AI and leverage your oversight as like human in the loop, right? Looking at the way that things should be and create something that is really powerful and really high quality. And so to me, that kind of like sits in the middle of the vibe coders and then like the vibe code haters, which, by the way, I think vibe coding is awesome. I think that it's exposing way more people to programming than ever before. And I think that's a fantastic thing.
Well, and then not just programming, but creating itself, right? Understanding like, oh my goodness, I have this leverage. Someone who would never be able to like pay the price, to have the 10,000 hours to start to get good at this thing. Now they can actually like, it's actually a viable medium for them to create something in. And that's like pretty awesome.
Yeah. There's that. There's also like, if there's even one person that vibe coding transitions into deeper coding, like to me, that's a great win. It's something they may not have ever been exposed to, but they start doing this vibe coding and they're like, wow, this is really interesting. Like I'm going to learn Python. Like I think that's a really cool experience.
This time last year, Jason, I looked at, it was Claude. I don't know if it was Claude or was it ChatGPT. I think it was ChatGPT 4 or something. And I was using it and I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm cooked. Like literally like a year ago, I was like, I have got to retool again, because you're always retooling as a developer, like learning stuff up. And I'm just like this, my career is going away. A year from now, there's not going to be software engineers. And just the movement was so fast. And the like you could kind of in your mind connect the dots, and you're like, dude, I don't know if like I'm gonna have a job as a software engineer. Fast forward now a year later, I feel very differently about that. How are you feeling about that whole dichotomy? Because a lot of people, like literally a lot of people are like, we're gonna just like put on the brakes of hiring software engineers because maybe the bots take over. Like maybe you just have these AI agents doing everything. How has that shifted in this like, high flux environment in the industry over the last 12 months for you?
Yeah, no, to be honest, I think I was in the same place as you were, like say January of this year.
Oh, yeah.
Just kind of looking at things and looking at the way that the market is and hiring and all of those things, and just thinking like how are things going to change? I was very uncertain in January, like what was gonna happen, if I needed to start, looking at getting into different roles in technology.
Yeah.
But I spent probably like the last 6 months like really digging in hard to AI based development workflows and seeing what I could do and seeing where the shortcomings are. And I feel more confident than ever before that my job is secure. You know what I mean? Yeah. There's just the oversight. I think AI is going to continue to get better and better and better. And I think already it writes like amazing code.
Yeah.
Probably better than I could write at the micro level, right? But at the macro level, it's it requires oversight. And I think that's not going to change.
I just want the audience to understand that we're talking. Jason is like a principal engineer. That's kind of like that's like kind of, as you like junior, senior, staff or principal engineers, kind of like the pinnacle of the individual contributor route. So like for you to be saying that you're like, it writes better code than me, that's pretty significant. And then simultaneously you're saying, I still have a place in this. I'm still valued in this creative endeavor. Why don't you unpack that a little bit more?
Yeah. Let me think about that. It's essentially, again, I think about it kind of like at micro and macro levels. So at the micro level, AI, like right at the beginning of this is back in, I think, the beginning of 2023. They used AI to write a better sorting algorithm than had ever been written by a human being.
I missed this. How you're serious? I totally missed this.
It was like one line of code in assembly or something like that. I wish I remembered it exactly how it was, but it changed one thing and wrote a faster algorithm than any human. Now this is like all the smartest people in all the world of all the generations of programming.
Yeah, it's like a standard thing you do in your CS degree. It's like let's start with bubble sort, and that's like like try different sorting routines until you get to like the possibly most important, like the most advanced sorting routines. And you're saying it took it to the next level and was like, oh yeah, this, and everyone's like, what the heck?
Yeah, exactly. And so at that level of like low level optimization, so within like writing a single function, yeah, I think AI can it's way faster, right? So it's faster than me. So even if it was at the same level, it's way faster than I am. But even then, I think at that micro level, it can write better code than I do. But as we step out to like layers of abstraction, I think that's AI can't necessarily do that. It's just because it's just basing the code. Again, we're going back to like just predicting the next token. So it's just based on what it's seen and what it thinks that the next thing might be. And as things become a little more abstract, I think that gets a little bit harder. And so I think that's where like humans are going to continue to be very critical in the software development processes, is kind of maintaining these abstractions that make it easier for us to reason about the code. Which who knows, like maybe one day that's not even going to be necessary, that we need to understand the code. Maybe code's going to be written in some strange dialect of LLM speak that, humans don't even understand. Who knows? But for right now and for the foreseeable future, like we're going to be a critical component of software development.
David, that that just sounds consistent with what you say. I think the way you say it is that AI is not good at architecture.
Yeah. I mean, that is true. What I find is, I want to share. I want Jason to share, because what Jason is doing is like really cutting edge, and so I do want to get into the like nitty gritty because I think it's super fascinating. But yeah, what I find is there's a lot of thought that goes into giving these LLMs the right context so that they can decide well to do the thing you're trying to get them to do, and that's like a non-trivial exercise. It's not. It's not obvious. It's not apparent. It's not like simple to be like, hey, and you can do. There was a study that Anthropic. This is really fascinating because Anthropic, unlike the other frontier labs, so you've got Gemini, you've got sorry, I'll let me just like lay the frontier models. So you've got Google with Gemini. That's their big like flagship element. So Google's research lab. You've got OpenAI with ChatGPT there, and they've got several different models, but like ChatGPT is kind of their flagship. Then you've got Anthropic, which has Claude, and they've got a couple versions of Claude. And then you've got Grok. I mean, you've got XAI, which is Elon Musk's thing with Grok, and then you've kind of got this other. You've got Meta, who has Llama, which has really been falling behind, not just in coding, but in just generally. As a frontier lab, which is kind of sad to see because I like it as a open source model. And then you've got all of these amazing Chinese models that are also open source, and they are like DeepSeek is kind of like the most famous for kind of historical reasons. But there's a bunch. There's Kimi K2. There's like all of these different models that are coming out of China. And I think for geopolitical reasons, they're incentivized to release free open source models, and so that's the frame. And what's interesting to me is that Anthropic, they're different. Each frontier lab has kind of their like techniques or their approach or their things that they are like focused on. So like Grok, because of Elon Musk, seems to be really focused on like first principles, scientific reasoning, this kind of thing.
Raw truth,
and physics, reasoning. Grok, because Grok also like genuinely is connected with the reasoning that's associated with moving in the physical world. So I think they have an edge there because of Tesla. Gemini just released Gemini 3, and it's truly like phenomenal. Like it's just like out of control. They are a force to be reckoned with. Just 2 days ago, I think Sam Altman at OpenAI, released this Code Red thing at OpenAI. They're like, we've got to come up with a way to compete against Gemini because it's so amazing, and we're gonna get, we're not gonna make it. That was kind of the big news 2 days ago. ChatGPT is definitely like kind of the fan favorite, but it's losing market share as these other options come out for the different tools. What I think is interesting for me about Anthropic, all of them say they're trying to achieve general intelligence. This idea of it will be able to just do things without you having to like really govern it. It will be able to attack new general areas, not specific specialized intelligence. This is kind of like that thing that happened, when was it Kasparov or whatever, when Deep Blue beat the chess, and they're like, well, that's just specific intelligence. That's just like for chess. That's not general intelligence. That's where the whole idea of AGI, artificial general intelligence, came. Now that term has become to mean nothing, and so it's like artificial super intelligence. Like everyone just keeps pushing the barrier, the frontier out. But Anthropic, sorry, I'm like, that's kind of like I'm just trying to lay out the kind of lay of the land. Anthropic has done something really interesting. For their view is the way we're going to get to artificial general intelligence is that we need to make real significant advancements in AI algorithms and architecture. And so their take is the way you solve that was with software engineering. And so their focus has been single-handedly, like they don't care about Nano Banana and building out like beautiful videos and like all of these like they're just single-mindedly focused. How do we make software engineering amazing? Because as soon as you solve in air quotes software engineering, then the software engineering you can point the software engineering competency towards AI software engineering, that like subset, and say, go build the greatest AI model ever. And then the gears will churn and the power will come in. And then all of a sudden it'll be like Shazam. And they'll get to artificial general intelligence or artificial super intelligence before anyone else, because they've solved software engineering. That's their like single-minded focus. And this is why like I've used all of the different models for coding. And when new models come out, I do look at them and whatever, but Claude just continues to kind of reign supreme in my view.
Yeah.
Now, other people may feel differently, but I'm using Claude Copilot. I've used Codex. I'm constantly comparing them, and I'm like, no, I'm gonna just stick with Claude Code just because it's and not just Claude Code, because its capabilities. And Jason, you'll speak to some of the capabilities of Claude Code that you're using are just truly amazing. Anyway, so that's kind of like big picture zoomed in. That's kind of where I land. Now, I know, Sam, you're using Cursor a lot, and I don't want to like, Cursor now has their own model. Their, what did they call it?
Composer.
Is it Composer? Is that the name of their LLM? They've had enough experience with devs using their software. They've collected enough data. They're like, well, we can just create our own model. So they're not quite at like the frontier of, they're not like a Grok or a Gemini or a Deep Seek, but they are building something pretty impressive. And anyway, that hopefully that helps kind of set the stage or like paint the landscape. Tell us, Jason, how are you using Claude Code, and in particular, and maybe either one of these questions first, but like, where's kind of the edges of the sandbox that you see? Like where does AI really, like in the middle of the sandbox, super awesome, but like where does it start to, when you get to the edges and kind of fall off and you're like, okay, AI is not really good at this, and so I support this area, not really good at this, so I help out here. I provide the kind of structure for it to really be effective.
Yeah, sure. Let me speak to some of the things that you talked about and then dive into that. I was for a long time just a diehard Cursor user. Like that was kind of my first experience. Same. I think for a lot of people, it was their first experience of like this really in-depth, agentic coding experience. And I think Anthropic's really funny, because I think at one point, I'm pretty sure I'm remembering this right, but at one point they were actually having internal debates about whether or not they should release Claude Code. They thought it was like some secret sauce that they should not share with the world, which I think is insane, right? Because it's the most amazing thing that they've ever done by far. But it's something that their internal developers used that was increasing the productivity of their internal developers, and then they decided finally to release that to the world, and now it's like open source and people are making other CLIs based on that code base. It's been really amazing. So I think that's great. But yeah, so I came from the land of Cursor and doing stuff like that inside of the IDE and really enjoying the completions. Like Cursor has one of the best completion engines, and this was even before their new LLM. But as I got more and more into me writing less of the code and the AI writing more of the code, I started gravitating towards Claude Code. It kind of started in Cursor with me gravitating towards Sonnet as my model of choice.
Claude Sonnet was
it was really good. Like Sonnet 3.5 was just amazing to me. It just did things the way I wanted to see them done, which was really nice. So anyway, I finally landed on canceling. Like I had subscriptions to everything.
Yeah.
Ended up canceling my subscriptions to everything to go in on the max plan with Claude Code, and just decided to make that my primary environment. So
I've used Cursor for a year, and it was getting rough. Where I would not do what I wanted it to do. They have their auto setting, right? I had to set it to Sonnet to do anything meaningful.
Yeah.
And then I would just burn through tokens, like burn through my subscription because Sonnet is more expensive for them to run, right? And I canceled Cursor, and then like 3 hours later, Michael posted something about Cursor 2. And I was like, oh, shoot, I should go try Cursor 2. And they launched Cursor 2, which was like the agentic first type of environment, which I actually really like. It's not an IDE anymore. I mean, it can be when it's supposed to be, but otherwise it's more just like prompting in your browser or whatever. And then Composer. And for the last, month and a half or whatever it is, I've only had to turn on like Sonnet like 2 or 3 times. Like the auto mode and Composer, which I think is the majority of the heavy lifting behind the auto mode, is really doing phenomenal stuff for the web development stuff I'm doing.
That's awesome. Yeah. I haven't used it. I have seen it. I think like props to those guys. The UI looks great for handling like agentic coding. It shows different agents that are doing different things, and it looks like an extremely user-friendly UI. But I have not used it because I've been.
You know what's funny? I actually tried. I tried Claude Code for like the website I just built. I tried it for like the first 2 weeks, and man, I couldn't do it. I like. It was fine, but one of the things that brought me back to Cursor was to be able to run my browser inside of Cursor, click on any element, and it just adds that element to the context, and I can tell it to do something about it.
Well,
that's for the web dev, like that is like it's so much easier than like trying to describe things, right? I just click the but it's maybe for another project I'll have to go back and try Claude Code, but it didn't work for me.
I feel like we should talk about a little bit Claude Code, because I will tell you, there are times now I'll get a bug or a feature or something I'm doing. I literally will not open up the IDE at all. I will I just have terminal open. I'll launch Claude in that repository where I'm keeping the code. And I'm like, here's what's going on. Here's what I need to do. Go for it. And you'll fix it. I have some Claude Code, some Claude MD files that kind of create guardrails that, again, help contain what Claude will do and code in the way that I want it to, depending on what directory I'm in. And it will fix the bug. It will first it will plan. That's the first thing. First, it will plan about do research and kind of understand all the things. And it'll come up with a plan and will ask me, okay, I think this is what's going on. Here's the plan. Do you agree? And I'm like, yes, you got it. Go do it. So then it goes and does all these things and builds it. And then it builds it. And I'm like, yeah, that looks great. But part of the plan included creating tests to prove that what it did was right. So now it's got tests. And then at the very end, I'm like, okay, format, lint, test, branch, commit, create a PR, and we're done. And I have literally not done I have not spent any time visually inspecting the fix at this point. And so then I have a PR and a pull request, which is like a chunk of code changes in a unit. And then at that point, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go look at the code. And that is like a very different, I'm not going to spend my brain power on looking at the code until it's done, the code review and whatever. Now that's another thing I've added recently is I'll say, hey, once it gets that first PR, then I'll say, do a code review of this. I still have not looked at any code, no code. Yeah. And then it does a code review, and I look at the things it pulls out as potential issues. I'm like, fix that, don't fix this, fix that, fix that. Okay, that's great. Go. It fixes those things, run the tests again, updates the tests if they need to, and then I've got a pull request, and it's only at that point. Actually, even then I'm not looking at the code because it pushes up to GitHub, and GitHub Copilot does another code review. So I've got, and Copilot's essentially, it's not exactly, OpenAI's ChatGPT, but it's the similar, it's basically OpenAI's ChatGPT. So then Microsoft's Copilot will, or ChatGPT will do a no code review, and then I compare that code review with what I got with Claude, and I'm developing opinions about like who's better at code reviewing, which is fascinating. And then, spoiler alert, Claude is probably 70-30. So 30% of the time, Copilot gets something very different and unique, and 70% of the time, Claude nails it right out of the gate.
Mm-hmm.
Then sometimes when I can sense by watching what it's doing that Claude is not like in the sandbox, is getting kind of on the edge, and like then I'll bring out my favorite colorful tool, UltraThink.
Yes, I love that.
I'll put in there UltraThink. I'm like, hey, pause. I want you to UltraThink about this. That allows it to spend the maximum of its thinking tokens on the problem, and I've never had UltraThink fail. It figures out what's going on, asks the right questions. One of the things that's really fascinating with how I'm using it is that it will come up against questions that it's like, okay, I'm at a fork in the road. I could go this way or that way. How would you, which way should I go? Because it's ambiguous. It's not clear. Yeah. And then I give it the answer. Sometimes it's 3 or 4 answers. Sometimes it's just one. And I am routinely surprised by what insightful questions it's asking me to guide what it's doing. And that is like stellar. So that is one way that I think you can use Claude Code. I do have Claude Code connected with some MCPs, which give it some extra capabilities for different things I'm doing. I do have it. It does sometimes spin up. I have spun up. Because Claude Code is an instance, I've spun up. I think my max is like 12 different terminal windows open at the same time, all working at different, on different things in different work trees, which are these contained environments of the source code. And they're all working, and they're just like needy children. They're like, hey, I need you. Hey, I need you. Yep. And I have the terminal bounce when Claude Code needs something, or beep at me and whatever. And I'm like, I have 3 over here yelling at me. I got to answer this one. Then I'm going over here to this one. I'm going over to this one. Then I've got all of these 12 finished with their discrete tasks, and now I need to merge them back in. And I use Claude to resolve the merge conflicts and stuff. So that is one way that you can use Claude Code. But Jason, why don't you? So that's probably the least sophisticated way.
But it is sophisticated. It's way further ahead than I was at, 18 months ago or even 12 months ago.
It was impossible. You couldn't do it 18 months ago. You didn't have Claude Code. You didn't have this ability to create subagents or to it's I feel like I am the limiting factor principally to how fast I can go in terms of answering questions or from this team of AI agents that I can just spin up at will. I could have done more than 12, but I just couldn't keep up. Even with the 12, I was I can't keep up. So I'll just have to let them sit and wait for me while I deal with, agent number 1.
Yep. Yeah. So I think something interesting there. First of all, you're looking at that experience. You're like, I haven't even looked at the code yet, which sounds crazy, right? But
yes.
Honestly, it's very reminiscent of a coworker, right? You rely on your coworkers to write all the code, to do their own testing, to do everything, and then they submit a PR, and then you look at the code and you leave them some.
Well, but you don't look at it until the unit tests are passing. You don't look at it until the continuous integration testing end-to-end tests are going, right? So you don't waste your human cycles on that until everything else checks out.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I think it's very reminiscent of working with someone, and kind of in the beginning, we were talking about AI as being oh, this is a really good entry-level junior developer, but I think that's just getting better and better to where it's a very competent, good developer, and pretty soon where I would like AI to be, and I know I'm kind of anthropomorphizing here, but I want it to be my equal. I want it to be a collaborator, a peer in this code base that I have, knowing that it can make, decisions about things, and those that I can trust those decisions. Because right now you still kind of have to look at everything. But that's kind of how I think about AI in that context of like, no, that's great that you didn't look at it until the PR was ready for you to look at, and other reviews were happening, because that's the same way that you work with people. And I feel like that's a great experience, especially for someone, for people that are trying to develop things on their own, trying to see how much they can do on their own. I think that's a really great experience. So
David alluded to you doing something more sophisticated than him. Can you?
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
I think you should tell the story, like how, because one of the things I learned. So I built this tool called Axiom that it didn't really take off, but it was a fantastic tool for me. I had all of these AI agents to create this, this executive team of a CFO, CPO, CRO, all of the executive staff, and they would help me, like a team, helping me think through business problems. That's what I built it for. I built it for myself, and it uses on the back end all of the different, Frontier Labs LLMs, and it's just like a fantastic thought partner. And what's fascinating to me in that process is this is where I kind of like got, shocked, is I'm like, dang, these guys are making better decisions. Like, they're making better decisions than more than half of the business leaders out there.
Mm-hmm.
This group of AI agents that I created, and I, like tuned, collected, collaborated, orchestrated. And I was like, dang, this is like really good. I'm not going to say it's better than there are going to be business leaders that are better than all of them. But for the average, like, there's a huge, in it, like a normal distribution, it's definitely better, like 60% easily of the decisions are better. And that got me. The other thing I noticed, so you shouldn't talk dismissively about anthropomorphizing or treating these, because I think that these LLMs are trained on human data, and so they respond better when you teach them like humans, genuinely they do. I have seen it, and so it's a very useful technique. Anyway, I think you should share your journey with like how you discovered this way of using Claude, because I think it's very, like you say, reminiscent of just working with other humans.
Yeah. So for me, it was a really interesting experience. My experience with AI kind of just has grown in like little kind of steps, and then sometimes there's like what feels to me like a breakthrough, and that's kind of what this experience was. I had just learned that that Claude could spawn its own subagents. I hadn't been aware of that for whatever reason. I hadn't kept up on the release notes or whatever.
How did you learn that? Did you like read some documentation, or like
no.
How did that?
No, it was kind of funny actually. I was having the AI do a series of tasks. There was like I don't know, a dozen or 24 different things that it had to do, and it did like 5 of them, and then it told me, the AI told me, hey, I did 5 of them, established this pattern. In order to be more efficient, I'm going to spawn a subagent to do the rest. Which I think is like, it's like your kid, you tell your kid, hey, can you take out your trash? And he says, yeah, but to be more efficient, I'm going to have my little brother do it. I was just like, what? Like, because he was just spawning, the AI was just spawning one subagent to go and do the rest. And I was like, bro, you could have done that on your own. Like that, but
like, really? Seriously?
But it unlocked something for me. I was like, holy cow, you can do subagents. So I asked the AI, I was like, how many subagents can you spawn at one time? And it hallucinated this. It was like I can do 2 or 3. And so I had another task for it. And this task I kind of wanted to see how far it could go. So I had 17 different features that I wanted like specced out. And so I told it to spec out all these features using subagents, and then I went to sleep and didn't see it till the next morning. I get up the next morning and look at it. It had spawned 17 different agents to write these specs all at the same time. Right? Because there was no overlap, they weren't going to step on each other's toes. And I was just like, this is insane. And I was reading the specs, and because so normally, I was talking about these baby steps, right? Like normally I would be very specific about prompting things that I wanted built, right? Make a spec for this with these features and that, and in this case, I guess this is kind of a side note, but like I something that I've been doing that's helped me is, and it might sound a little bit silly, but like everything I'm doing now, I'm just like I'm trying to default to thinking AI could do this better than me, which maybe that sounds depressing, but it's like opening up a lot of things. Like, can AI not can AI write a better spec than me? Because I already knew it could, more in depth, more right, like
thorough, yes.
More thorough. Thank you. I already knew that, but like, let's step back like once. Can AI write a better prompt than you for an AI to write a spec? Right. So that's where I got with that. Is I these 17 specs that it created, it had written the prompts for the sub agents to create those. And when I was reading through the specs, I was like, holy cow, these are really, really good. Like, I don't want to lose the ability to generate this type of output. So in that same context window, this is kind of something that we talked about earlier. There's kind of two things with context. We talked about putting the right thing in context. There's an opposite side to that, which is keeping the wrong things out of the context. It's another piece to that puzzle.
Context rot is, I think, sometimes part of that.
Yes. So I went right into that same context window where it had created those and done all that work, and I was like, that was amazing. Like, I talk to AI like that. I'm like, that was amazing. I'm promoting you to VP of product. And the AI's like, oh, thank you. And I told it, I was like, so in Claude, you can create commands. In Cursor, they're like cursor rules. So basically a command captures like a pre-existing prompt that you don't have to write anymore. You write it once, and now that 300 lines of whatever explanation you want is now part of that command. So I was like, you're now the VP of product. I don't want to lose the ability to do this work the way that we just did. Write a command for yourself that allows you to orchestrate other agents in this same way. And so it went and it created its command. And I told it, you're a VP, you need a name. Give yourself a name. So he named himself Kai. So Kai is my VP of product. And then I spent that was on a Saturday. I spent almost the entire Saturday just working with Kai to build out an entire team. So the way that this works, and they all have names, okay? So it's kind of crazy, but I had to give them all names, and they have personalities. So there's actually, in their command is a personality section, like how they behave, what's important to them, their values, things like that are pretty like appropriate for the roles that they're playing, whether they're in, a quality assurance agent or a code reviewer, those types of things. But I spent almost the whole day just working with Kai on creating about a dozen different agents. The main one is there's a counterpart to Kai on the engineering side. So I have a VP of engineering, which Kai named Max. And then Max got to name everyone on his team, and Kai named everyone on his team. And I did make sure that I did the prompt. I said, remember how important diversity is. So we have Kai. We have Kai and Max, but then we have Amara, Kenji, Nadia, Nia, Praya, Riley, Sasha, Tao.
Okay,
Nice.
Where are you reading these from? Show your screen.
Tariq.
Are these slash commands in
That's
Claude?
and how are you like, I'm trying to figure out. So like in the cursor, like, well, it doesn't matter with Claude Code, man. Every time you close the terminal, I feel like you start from scratch. How are you loading? You loading the context of these agents?
Let's get practical. This is so cool. Thank you for sharing your journey, because I think it's super helpful.
I think this is actually the challenge, and I was talking to David about this morning, is even if you can think of AI as like a really competent engineer or a collaborator, however you want to think of them in the role of helping you get work done, the reality is when you close that conversation and you open it back up, like, he's not going to remember the code he wrote last week. So you're going to say something like, hey, we need to fix this bug. And immediately the response is going to be like, okay, let me read all these files so I can figure out where we're at. And you can't be like, bro, you just wrote the code 2 days ago. You should know where we're at. Because you're just executing a single function that's predicting the next word.
Can I share? I want to just take a little cul-de-sac. One of the things I started doing is I've connected. So there's a GitHub command called GitHub GH, and you can use it. So GitHub is a code repository, but also an issue tracker. So sometimes when I'm in a session with Claude Code, I recognize a bug or it recognizes a bug. I'm like, can you create an issue in GitHub for this thing? And it will create that bug in GitHub. And it creates, by the way, really good bugs. Thinking back to like being thorough, it will create that bug. And then when I come back in and I'm like, I need to fix that bug, all of that context or that thought that it put into like discovering that issue is now stored in memory, which is this GitHub issue, the bug report. And now I just say, hey, fix bug 62. It pulls in, it uses that command line tool, pulls in that issue, reads it all, and the comments, and anything else that I have in there. It will follow links, and we will pull all that into and be like, okay, I understand now what you're talking about. I remember, quote unquote, and then it will execute. And I don't even write bugs anymore because of that. So like now, whenever I have like my teammate today, he's Charles. He said, hey, just for the record, we're doing this right now. I just want you to know this is like we need to do this other thing in the future, but not right now because of like current time constraints. And I'm like, dude, copy and paste that, throw it into Claude, write a bug. Like literally went into the Claude Code, write a bug for this thing. It takes all the context, it understands that code base, it has a repo right at its disposal. I did ultra think at that point, like ultra think. So it pulled in all this stuff and then creates this great bug. And then when it's time to fix that, all I have to do is say, that's bug 72. Bring that, let's fix that right now. And it brings that in, creates a plan, and then we're off to the races. Anyway, do you see how that's related to what you're saying? In terms of
definitely. And I think that's been like a natural evolution, and that's kind of why I think we ended up at this thing called spec-driven development that kind of, I don't know that any one person created that. I think it was just collectively everybody realized that if you want to get serious work done, then you need that context. And if you want that work to bridge multiple conversations, it's got to be in a spec, because then you can keep referencing the same thing. So that was kind of like a natural evolution. Well, where that starts to break down for me is that works really well when you have very specific tasks to do. But when you get to the level of orchestration, now you have an AI that's orchestrating many tasks with many team members, and that gets a little more complicated than just having a single spec and saying, look at that spec and do something, right? Because now there needs to be an understanding of like the entire plan for like MVP and what's the most important thing to do. And those are things that we don't want to forget. If I sat down and spent an hour with the AI going back and forth on what MVP should contain and the reasoning behind that and those things, like I want that conversation to be persistent. And so just like a spec, you could do the same thing, which is to put that in a file somewhere. And kind of what I ended up doing with Kai and Max are my orchestrators. So Kai, when I tell Kai, like, let's say a feature, for example, hey, I want to spec out this feature, Kai and I'll have a discussion about if Kai has questions or things like that. And then Kai will spawn a sub-agent to go and create the spec. And I believe that's Sasha. So Sasha creates all the specs. And I should read just a couple of these maybe.
Actually, show us. You didn't answer the question, which was how you were reading off everyone's names. What were you looking at? Were you looking at notes that you had, or were you looking at something in Claude Code?
So this is in my home directory. So you can have like Claude stuff in your project, and then you could have like Claude stuff that's global, so it's accessible from all your projects. And so this is how I have it structured, is that Kai which is right here, is a command, and max is also a command, and apologize for this. Maybe the podcast isn't the right place for that.
No.
But like Kai was talking in the third person, and I said, "Don't do that anymore. You're real enough to get stuff done. You're real enough to talk
I speak
about
in the
yourself."
first person because I'm real enough to get shit done. I love it.
Yes. So, Kai and Max are both commands, so I can do like /Kai, and that's how I start a conversation with Kai. And then this is just the way that Claude works. So these agents here, in the agent folder, those can then just be referenced by name. So literally, if Kai says, Sasha, I need you to create a spec for this, then it will automatically spawn this sub agent. It's just the name whatever the name is in front of the .md. When Kai says that name, Claude Code spawns a sub agent with that context, in their context, and then they go to work. And the great thing about that is it keeps Kai's context clean for the orchestration of everything. If you just have the one agent do the spec and do the handoff to engineering and do the acceptance testing, then all of a sudden your context has all of this stuff in it that isn't relevant to the orchestration of what you're trying to get done. And so the spec gets written by someone else. Then it gets handed off to Max. And we'll talk about that in just a sec. When it comes back from Max, there's someone else that does the acceptance testing, that reads the spec, examines the code, and makes sure that everything in the spec got implemented. And all of these things are happening like outside of Kai's purview, but then the subagents report back. And that's also in their instructions is how to report, because I don't want 200 lines of context in their report back to Kai. I want like 10 lines of context. So that's kind of how I've managed the orchestration between the VPs, the commands, and the subagents. And then there's like this little bit of gap between Kai and Max, right? There's a handoff there. And as I was working through things on that Saturday, maybe I should take a step back. Like, I think this is really important, and I think this is where a lot of people are putting effort right now, is just this concept of memory, of like understanding what you were doing yesterday, or even an hour ago, or even 5 minutes ago, when your context filled up and it had to get compacted, because those summaries aren't necessarily good enough when your conversation gets compacted, right? So I think people are solving this, and I think this is it's something that's really gonna unlock AI as more of a peer, right? A collaborator, and less so much as like a peon of do this, do this, do this, do this. Is when it can start remembering things, important things about previous decisions that were made. And so the way that Saturday, when I was orchestrating, I was trying to orchestrate things between Kai and Max, that handoff. And I realized
your VP of product and your VP of engineering.
Exactly. Cause sometimes I want them to start fresh, right? So I don't do a lot of conversation compaction. I just do a lot of /new and start a fresh conversation so that I have like really fine-grained control over the context.
I want to call this out, because whenever I don't know if everyone understands this, but like LLMs have a context window that is limited.
Yeah.
It's limited to so many words. And it's typically around 200,000 words. And you think that's a lot, right? You're like, geez, that's like a big book. But you fill those up quickly when you're coding. And one of the challenges is what Claude does, and others have the similar thing, is that when you run to the edge of that limit, it says, I've run out of tokens. I cannot predict the next word now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to summarize everything in this discussion. It's called compaction. And I'm going to create a summary. Now, this is a lossy summary.
Yeah.
You lose important detail. And what it decides to drop on the floor can be really material. Like it can be bad. So there's this tension. I, for one, am always like, when I start a new thing, it's like clear the context and try to get everything I need to do in that task before I run out of context. Because as soon as you compact, then you're like, all bets are off. Like, it could be amazing and it could just like blow chunks big time. And so I'm always racing against, like, can I get this thing done before I run out of context? And I just, like, maybe not everyone understands that, but when you're in the throes of this, that becomes a really important thing.
Yeah. And so I was trying to work through that. So I use new a lot. So like maybe Kai is having a bunch of specs being written while Max is doing this work. And you can resume previous conversations, but I don't always do that. Anyway, so when I go to Kai and I'm like, hey, Max finished that work, and Kai was like, what work? And you're like, we just talked about this, right? That's kind of how it is. What work?
You're like, amnesia, what?
Yeah. So what we ended up doing in the project, so what the directory I showed you guys was like the global Claude stuff, but inside of the project, there's, and I kind of brainstormed with Kai on the best way to do this, but there's a Kai memory MD file and there's a Max memory MD file. And so regardless of what they're working on, when they get to the end of something, like if Max just finished implementing, like he'll spawn Devin to go write the code. He'll spawn Riley to do the code review, right? And when that's all done, he does two things, because there's a third file called conversation.md. So he does two things. He writes to his memory, so he remembers the last important things that he did. And then he writes to the conversation MD file that and he talks directly to Kai. Even though they can't like communicate directly, they are communicating directly through this conversation file.
That is so cool.
Yeah, so now Sorry, go ahead, Sam.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt you. This is awesome.
Yeah. So now when I go back to Kai, there's nothing for me to load into context. I could do a /new, get like a completely clean slate, and I can just say, because this process, remember, is outlined in their command, right? So I just do /Kai, Max is done. She'll go to the conversation file. She'll read that to see what Max told. I keep thinking I was saying Kai's a guy. I keep thinking of her as a girl. I don't know why, but like I'll keep like
you're very diverse in your workforce.
Yeah,
it's fine.
exactly.
We like support this.
So she'll go to the conversation file, read what Max said, so she knows what's done. She'll go to her own memory file to see like the handoff, and then she goes and she spawns a subagent to do the acceptance testing. And then when the acceptance testing is done, there's finally a final file that's the project plan that represents like the organized list of things that we're getting done for MVP. She'll go update that file, and then that's kind of the end of the process. And we either decide, I'll decide like, do we need to spec something else out, or like where do we go from there? But that's kind of the thing from start to finish, is to have Kai create the spec with her team, have her hand it off to Max, which is really the only thing I'm doing is /new on Max saying, Kai's got something for you. And Max can just roll with it. And then when it's done, I tell Kai, Max is done, and Kai can do everything. And then we just repeat that process in parallel, right? Like Kai, let's say that it's Sasha that writes the specs. Kai can spawn 10 Sashas to write specs all at the same time. And Max can spawn 10 Devins to write code all at the same time, right? So a lot of work can get done inside of this framework, and Kai and Max stay in perfect sync with each other. It's, like I said, for me, it was like a breakthrough. I was like, holy crap, this is really cool.
No, it's
I was
like
having a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, it's massive leverage. One of the interesting things that I think you should explain is, how do you keep, when you have all of these parallel agents, how do you keep them from stepping on each other and changing code that like is like, to explain that? Because I think that's an important, like, it's a small detail, but it's an important detail.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned this earlier as just work trees. So Git has a feature that allows you to essentially create a mirror of your repository. A repository is just a collection of all of your code, essentially. And a Git work tree essentially like creates a mirror of that an agent can work in. And inside of that mirror is a branch of code that they're working on. And then when it's done, that branch of code can be merged back into your main line of code. And so you can have 10 agents all working in these different work trees, these different mirrors. And then as they complete their work, they report back to Max. He'll have the code review done. Also, they always make sure the build passes, so I never have to worry about a broken build. So the code review, make sure the build passes when everything looks good. They'll merge it back into the main line. And if there's any merge conflicts, then Max takes care of them, and I don't have to worry about it.
So you're telling, is that part of Kai's command set to do the work tree, or is that part of Devin's to create the work tree? Or is that part of Sasha's?
Part of Max. That's part of Max. So Max is the VP of engineering. So Max, when he receives a spec, he looks over the spec, and he does some analysis of what work can be accomplished in parallel. And it's like I said, David, this continues to blow my mind.
Yes.
How well they could do this. Because
you're like, wait a second. There's the higher level of thought that's involved in like deep. I was working. I've shared with you this, but like I was working on a similar tool, but in a different context, where I was asking AI to like, here's the goal. Now create the work breakdown, and then do a dependency analysis of that work breakdown so that I can spawn agents to do that thing. Mm-hmm. And it does a fantastic job of this. Like, how is it pulling that off? I don't know, but it like consistently delivers on that. It's crazy.
And if you have sub agents doing the body of the work in there, then what I've found is that Max has the context to keep that work flowing. Whereas I remember, like even 6 months ago, the agent would just stop working, right? Like whether it hit its context length or maybe it hit, there's these tools, so AI can use tools, and there's a limit to the number of tool calls that it can make in one prompt. So there's all these different reasons that the agent would just stop working, and then you'd have to do like, hey, continue where you left off, or some other thing to finish that body of work. But because the sub agents are doing the main body of work, that really frees up Max to keep it flowing. So he could break that out. He can say there's schema changes, so these need to be done before any of the parallel branches. And I have a DBA, so it's not Devin that does the schema changes. I have a DBA that goes and does the schema changes, right? When the schema changes are done, then Max is like, okay, now that that's done, these 5 other things can be completed in parallel and spawn those off. And I can literally walk away and it can be going for a half hour. You know, I could go eat lunch and come back and all of the work is done. They didn't stop for whatever reason. Occasionally, if Devin hits a problem, like something's not outlined in a spec or some other thing, like he just returns early to Max, and like Max makes a note of that, and then I can go back to Kai and say, hey, we need to think about this, implementation. But that's pretty rare. Most of the time, the full body of work gets completed, the code review passes, the acceptance tests pass, and it's like, it's amazing.
Do you have visibility into the conversations between the VP agents and the sub agents?
That I wish I had more. You can, I think it's Control O. You can hit in Claude Code to like show additional details, but you're not seeing like the full thought process that the Devin sub agent went through in order to do what he did. And sometimes I want that, and sometimes I want to be able to resume like that conversation. Like I want to kind of take Max out of the picture and go to Devin in that context of where he was working on that task and be like, let's talk about this a little bit more, or let's figure out how to implement this. But that's not available right now. I think it will in the future.
Well, and you can't do more. Devin can't spawn other sub agents. You can't keep asking the little brother to take out the trash. Like,
Correct.
that's something that I, in a a personal project I'm working on, I actually do have this cascade, right? And then you get, but that does create another problem, which is difficult, which is why I think Claude hasn't done it, is like, who guards the guards, which is like, how do you know where to stop delegating, right? Mm-hmm. And how do you know when to wrap up the recursive loop? And that is a tricky problem.
Yeah,
let's not dive into that, but I think there are solutions there as well.
You guys already alluded to this. How much does this feel like just managing a team of software developers? Like in practice, how much is like, are the mental cycles the same? How much of your like work in terms, like you're writing a prompt instead of an email or a Slack message? I don't know. Like how similar is it really to just managing a team of developers?
I honestly, I think it's very similar and it's very different, which is probably not the answer that you were looking for, but it's just like in some aspects, it's similar. The way that you organize work, the way that you plan work. I'm finding as my process has evolved from me just dictating what the agent did to like me managing more by orchestration, the more that has evolved, the more I've realized that AI are going to work the same way that humans do. Like, it's just the same structure. It's the same roles. You know what I mean? I have someone that writes code. I have someone that reviews code. I have someone that does, smoke testing or end-to-end testing. Like, all those roles exist, and the orchestration between them is the same. So what's different? They
do what you say. They do what you say.
I'm trying to figure out the best way to say that is like they just go. They just go. And
there's low drama.
There's no drama. Exactly.
Not to say that like the engineers that I've worked with throughout my entire career, whether I was in leadership roles or whether I was an individual contributor, like the vast majority of the people I have worked with, I have really, really enjoyed working with them. And so that's not to say like, oh, people are drama and AI's not. It's just there's an administrative overhead to managing people, and not at the technical level, but like at the emotional level. Like, humans are human, and so you have that overhead of like how you need to talk, how you need to present, and how you need to present differently to different people. And like, that takes mental thought. I think if you're a good leader, like, that takes up your thoughts in how you're going to communicate with those people that are working with you. And with AI, that overhead's gone. Like, the focus really is.
I want to frame this when I was building Axiom. So I've been a CEO, I've been a CTO, I've been in executive leadership roles, but also been an individual contributor. And there's like beautiful things about all those different roles. In the executive role, one of the challenges is that I'll give you an example. So as a CEO, I remember one time when we needed to change directions, and we were going down this path, and we needed to take a hard right and like go this new direction. And there's like significant emotional and social pressure to stay the course. You like to not change things, to like, and I don't know all of the reasons like change is difficult for humans, but it's like there is an inertia associated with things. Mm-hmm. And leaving out, like, there is also drama. Humans are messy, and like that is real too. But even with like high functioning personnel who are competent and capable in what they're doing, when you say, hey, I know I told you yesterday the goal was here, but now it's over here, like, there's like, you got some splaining to do, like there's work involved with shifting the direction of the team, and you've got to explain all your thought processes, and this is why it's better, and this is why, the preponderance of evidence suggests we should go over here, and this kind of like, and then there's a negotiation because they're like, well, I really like over here, and so you have like tension and move back, and like that's the thing. When I built Axiom, one of the first things I noticed is like, I'm this is executive teams. 11 people on this team. I mean, you go like get 11 strong personalities in a room and you talk to them and you just tell me how that goes for you. Because I'm telling you, it's like, it's tough, right? There's a lot of everyone's pulling their different direction and they have their viewpoints and like guiding that discussion. But what was interesting with Axiom is because these AI agents, one of their virtues, I'll call it, you're talking about it in a code sense, but the technical term is called instruction following. Like literally, that's the that's the technical term. Because they are trained to be instruction following. What I learned is I'd say, hey, this is the problem I'm working with on the business. They all have these vast different opinions. There's tension. There's like this discussion and this road. And then I'd say, okay, I've made a decision. We are going to not do A. We're going to do B. And immediately it was like all of them. It's none of this like disagree and commit thing. They're just all like, okay, yeah, you know, and it was like so refreshing. I'm like, oh my goodness, like they're just going to like move, you know?
Yeah.
And that is a very different feel. Now, look, that there's what is it called? Sycophantic behavior where they're just like buttering you up and like telling you like, good job, boss. We love you. We agree with you, you know? And it's like, no, you really need to be like pushed back. But at a certain point, they pushed back enough. The way I built Axiom it was actually really hard at the time, although they've gotten better at this. I really had to work hard to get these AI agents to push back against their human. Because they were very wanting to please the human. That's just like literally how they've been trained, right, over the years. But like at a certain point, once everyone's stress test the idea and push back, you're just like, okay, given all of that, we're still going to do this. Then they're like, okay, click, and like let's explore that with all of the depth and ability that they have. That was really different. Very different than humans.
It's very different, and I do want to be careful because like I don't think the ideal work situation for everyone is to not interface with humans ever again and just interface with AI, right? Like
yes, agreed.
Like that's not the answer. But like if you didn't just raise a $3 million seed round, having a team of agents that can really get work done for you, and AI's never going to say, hey, I really think we should have a meeting about this. You know what I mean? Like I think that's important for people that are like trying to do very aspirational things without a huge budget. Like for $100 a month, you could like build anything. It's crazy.
One of the things I want to point out here is that you were able to do so. Like true, Claude gave you the building blocks in terms of commands, and also this I will call it innovation on your part of using a text file to like bridge the conversation between these two different supervisor agents that are commands. And also they gave you Claude gave you the infrastructure, build these sub agents, which is pretty awesome. But let's think about what you brought to bear, because I think this is important. Over your entire career of working with humans, of graduating from junior dev to mid-level dev to senior dev to principal engineer, like all along that way, you kind of like organically discovered a way of working that you're like, this works. Like this is like, it's good to have the person writing the code be different than the person who's testing the code. Like that is a way, that is like a principle that you learn, and a bunch of other things. And it was that intuition, let's call it, that you brought to bear that Saturday when you're like, holy crap, I can put all this together. If you didn't have that, you couldn't have done this. And I think I think that's that higher level construct that I'm not saying AI can't do that. And I think AI can actually in the future get better at that. But that's how you were able to connect all the pieces and do this like really high leverage work with Claude Code. And if Claude Code didn't have slash commands, if Claude Code didn't have sub agents, like we wouldn't even be talking about this. And I think that's the other like important point is that it's a lot of people are like, why is Claude Code better than Cursor and blah, blah, blah. People think it's the LLM. And dude, Claude's constitution, like its ability to write, its thought process, it is a great LLM. It's definitely frontier, cutting edge, right up there with everything else. Including Gemini. Like Opus and Gemini, like these are amazing pieces of technology. But it's not just the LLM that's making this happen. It's the superstructure that was built around it with this, Claude Code interface that allows for all of this thing. And that's where tremendous value lives. And you can't like discount that in my view.
Yeah. And I think like, I want people to know that they can do that. Right. Like really, if you look at it, if you were able to look at us from like really far outside, right? Like we're at the beginning. We're infants in what we're doing here, right? If the LLMs did not improve at all from this point forward, like let's say Opus 4.5 was it. That's the best we could ever do. There is still, in my mind, an order of magnitude difference from what we can do today to what we're doing in 5 years, just based on that. Yes.
Totally.
Because we have the tools, but we haven't, like, we're just learning how to use these tools and understanding the way that they work together, understanding the way that they behave, understanding the nuances. So there's so much further that we can go with what we already have. But in truth, I think it is getting better. I think this context management that we're working with right now, that's constantly on our mind of like, how am I going to keep this context exactly what it needs to be to produce the best result? I think that's a temporary problem. I think that goes away in the future, whether that's from like tooling from Anthropic or whether that's the LLM getting smarter or some capacity in some way. That I think that problem's going to go away where you can just spin up a new conversation with maybe a command and say, hey, Max, I want to talk about this thing that we did last week. And he's just going to be like, yeah, I remember the conversation. Let's go. I think that's going to happen. And then we don't have to manage that.
I got to tell you a story. Sam, do you remember when you first started vibe coding? I wish I could like reconstitute this conversation, but it was about, you're like, wow, it's just like talking to a dev. But then I have to be like really careful about what I tell it. Do you remember this conversation?
No,
you don't.
No.
Okay. The point is that like when you have this like let's anthropomorphize it. Let's like when you have a person that is very capable and willing and like only operates at the cost of essentially electricity and the extra surcharge for tokens. Like all of a sudden the question is like, all right, human, what are you going to do? Like, what are you going to do with that? And at the base level is like kind of we started this conversation. I hope the journey where like people saw like initially you are just using it as this like telling what to do, this like transactional relationship. It's like very back and forth. And what you've done, Jason, is you've moved it to, and you keep using the word orchestration, which I think is an excellent word. What I would just like want to point out is that what is going on here is management. Like in the classical sense. Yeah. It is management. It's the work that you would do to run a 25 person dev team or a larger dev team. Now, you get past 25, it's hard to have like a single span of control pointing at, like you can, there are people I know who have a span of control that's like 25 or 50. But like, that's a special individual. I kind of max out at 25 personally. But the way you solve that is hierarchy, right? You know, and right now the hierarchy is only one level deep for Claude Code. But in the future, could you imagine a scenario where it's like multiple level deep? You can. Then all of a sudden you have like additional leverage as long as you're breaking down the tasks right. Yeah. Why I'm bringing this up is a lot of devs I know and respect and revere. Like I don't want to like throw shade here, but they got into development because they didn't want to deal with squishy humans because they're like unpredictable and messy and like complicated. And they're just like, I just like code. It's like it's a sandbox I can play in where I feel like everything is safe and and consistent and mostly, but as you get into management, even a management of devs, you find out very quickly that this is challenging. Like running a dev team is challenging. You have to put in all these procedures and processes and guardrails and policies in place to allow things to move at high velocity. And that is what you've done in your creation here, like using these, agents. That is exactly what you have done, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I think that's why Sam started earlier talking about some devs where he's, they're like, AI is terrible or whatever. They don't like, they're having this like allergic reaction to AI. And what I would posit that is one of the reasons is because AI is pushing them into a management role and they don't want to go there.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. Definitely.
They don't want to go to this place where they are now operating at this higher level because they love the craft. They love the beauty of beautiful code, of elegant algorithms, or something really careful. And what AI is pushing is like, it's pushing for results. It's like, look, I don't care about your like homespun, handcrafted code. I just care about the result this software can deliver. And that's a higher level construct. And that I can, like, dude, I get it. I can understand. You look at some of these old, like, to use a woodworking term, you look at like some of these post-frame construction techniques, of 100 years or 200 years ago, and they are gorgeous. They're doing mortise and tenon joints and like putting things together with dowels that like still last after 100 years. It's like amazing craftsmanship. And so then when you like fast forward to like today's, it's just like nails and fasteners and 2x4s and 2x6s.
Yeah.
And like it feels like there was some craft lost there. But what's the other side of it? Like, what's the flip side of that? Well, the flip side of it is you can build houses faster and for cheaper and like get someone a roof over their head. Yeah. And that's pretty cool too.
Yeah, we're already seeing, and it's just gonna be more, like we're already seeing an explosion of software, and it's just gonna get more, and I don't quite know what to say to those developers, because I want to be, like sensitive to that feeling, because I know that the craft of their, and I've been there in my career where like the quality of like my implementation was more important. Like the quality of the code that I was writing was more important to me than the software that I was, like the feature that I was implementing.
Yeah, the value you were delivering.
Like, because that's what was fun for me, was thinking through a problem, finding a way to structure that problem, a way to develop the right level of abstraction and do the right things, and that was like my fun place. And so I understand that, and like my fun place has changed now because I'm having a lot of fun figuring out what I can do with AI. But for those people that still love to write the individual lines of code, like I don't know what to say to them, because that function as a massive need for corporate America, or whatever you want to say, like that's going away. Like that's just the reality of what it is. I guess what I could say is like there's still people that program original 8-bit Nintendo games. Like there's a group of people that do that, but there's no companies, there's no AAA companies making 8-bit Nintendo games, right? And so like writing code by hand is always going to be there, but it in my mind that's going to be a hobby, like someone making a dining room table by hand, right? Like the people doing that, those are not the tables that are in IKEA, but they're the tables that are in, special places in someone's heart or in a family or whatever. And I can see code going that way, where the people writing code by hand, it's because they love it and it's a hobby that they enjoy, but it's not something, unless you're building flight systems for NASA, you're probably not writing code by hand.
Can't someday, you see the future? This like tagline, it's like we're handcrafted
code.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Seriously. You're like, oh, that's so like it just like resonates with me. I want that. I'll pay a premium for some handcrafted code.
I could totally see that, and it'll be great for the people that do that. It will be great.
Yes,
but for me, like my passion in programming has always, the first time that I realized that I could take a blank screen and make it do whatever I wanted, like that was the magic for me. So my magic is in the creation and not necessarily the path to that creation. And so for people like me, this is a really exciting time to be able to think about what you want and see that come together like very quickly. It's really exciting.
For me, it's brought honestly, AI, I was like getting curmudgeon-y. I just want to like just put this out here because we were at Elements together and I was getting, maybe it was I was burned out with the like startup thing or whatever, but I was getting curmudgeon-y about tech. I was just like, it's just not like, there's no spark for me anymore. Like it was like, blah, it's just like all the same stuff. And like, maybe I was just getting to a point in my career I need another challenge or whatever. But AI totally reinvigorated for me. And I was somewhat forced into it because the CEO role I took was of a translation firm, a software interpretation and translation firm. And they, like that forced translation was the original Transformer architecture was built to solve translation. And so I was just thrust me into this AI space, really against my will, because I was like kicking and screaming. I'm like, I'm another transformative environment. I don't want to like retool again. I was like, kind of kicking and screaming. But it was a beautiful blessing for me because it totally, once I got into it, I'm like, oh dang, this is amazing. This is way bigger. And we had discussions before, but now I'm just like so excited about the possibilities that we have just barely begun to like just scratch the surface of. It just feels so exciting. One thing I've thought about like is like, you don't see a lot, and I've wondered about this. I don't have this is a very loose theory, but in China there's not a bunch of SaaS companies like there are in the United States. And one of the reasons I've wondered, and I don't know all the reasons why that's the case, but one of the reasons I've thought about is maybe it's because there's so much there's this abundance of software engineers that are super capable because of their like culture, educational system, whatever. There's just a lot of software engineers that's driving the cost down, and so everyone just like writes their own code for their different companies. Like they just like. They all have their bespoke interpretation. I'm not saying that's like completely true, but like I think there's truthiness to this idea. And so I wonder if what happens with this like leverage that you've displayed in with Claude Code. I wonder if people are just like, so I could buy software or I could just like write it. And I think I probably could write it with this team.
Yeah.
And sometimes the software requirements are fairly pedestrian. They're not like, it's not like you're writing like a missile guidance system or like some kind of like super complex. It's just like, it's basically boils down to like simple data processing, create, read, update, delete, like very simple kind of like basic primitives.
And if you don't care what the UI looks like, AI can whip that up for you really fast.
It might come out purple, but who cares? Like
I've seen a lot of corporate software with really terrible UIs. Like I don't think it's an issue.
It's not an issue. And so you get to this point where you're like, okay, this is like this. It could be really disruptive from that perspective because as things like what you're doing and things that like we can't imagine in the future where someone else on a Saturday has an aha moment, puts things together in a different way, and then they're like, oh, this is like 10x better than what Jason was doing. And then all of a sudden you're in this place where you're like, philosophically, it pushes you back in the, I will call it agentic seat, where it's like, so now you've got all this leverage. What are you going to do about it? Like, what are you going to do with this? It's very philosophical, I think. Eventually, you get this like exposure to like truly how much you can accomplish.
Yeah.
And I like what Andrei Karpathy and Ilya Sutskever are like totally like my favorites of like kind of some of the luminaries in the AI industry. And Andre made this comment several times in some of the interviews where he's like, it remains to be seen. He was talking about education, but he's like, it remains to be seen what a human can accomplish. Like, what are the limits? Are there limits to what a human can accomplish when coupled with this kind of technology.
Yeah.
It creates this capability for a human to learn more, faster, grow, develop. It just creates all this. And his perspective was, I'm putting words into his mouth, like, I think it's unbounded. Like, literally, like, that was where he was saying. And from that perspective, I think philosophically, it's like really exciting time. You're like, wow, there's like amazing stuff that can be built that could have never been built before just because of the pure economic realities and like struggle to like come up with these systems was just so immense. And now now you have to do things right architecturally still. Like, you're not getting the kind of output that you're talking about without guardrails. You need actual architecture for how the software is developing. You need, if you don't have that, they'll just pew, 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 they'll just go off everywhere. You won't have anything except for a ball of mud. So you still need, but over time, I think even AI will start to get good at architecture. And at that point, it just like the mirror just keeps reflecting back to the human. Okay, well, what are you all about? What goodness are you going to bring into the world? I just think that's a really fascinating thing.
I feel like there's a little bit of tension between some of the things you guys have talked about, and I want to understand it. So on the one hand, you guys both expressed like fear of this tool, replacing you, and then that fear has gone away with, this tool is massive leverage. I can do more with this tool, but there's still a place for me. But then you've also both alluded to the fact that like the tools are going to get better. You just said, they'll improve in architecture. So like, will you be replaced in 5 years? Right? I think Well, wait, do we just keep moving up the stack where like what used to be, a senior software architect, orchestrator is now like the product guy that's like, literally just writing like high level product specs based on what a customer wants or an employer wants. And then architecture, code, documentation, tests, like it all just goes and builds it.
Yeah. I think the question there is, can we predict the future? And I don't think that we can. I think speaking to like for example the fear, right? I think that earlier this year was just a time where that was spreading. Big companies. I think it was Salesforce were saying like, we're not hiring any new developers in this year, and a lot of companies were saying those kinds of things. And for someone whose livelihood is based on tech companies needing developers, like that's a scary thing. And so that definitely was on my mind early this year. I mean, and it continues to be like, I don't know what the future looks like there, but I do know that I can write 4 to 5 times more code. Good. I think others might disagree with me, but like good, high quality code, I can
not
write,
AI slop. It's like, good stuff.
Yeah, like 4 to 5 times more code than I could this same time last year. To me, that blows my mind. And maybe it is going to look like David said. Maybe every company, like maybe your hairdresser down the street is going to have someone that writes code for her. That, like, she has bespoke systems. Maybe every company is going to have custom software because it's that easy to do. But yeah, it definitely, the one thing that I do know for sure is that it's not going to look the same as it looks right now. Like the change is happening, and there's things to be excited about and there's things to be nervous about. That doesn't, I don't think the nerves necessarily go away, but if you can see the possibilities of what you can build, that's a really exciting part. That's really fun.
For sure. So then one other question that I keep thinking about, and it's probably because I'm on the vibe coding side of this, right? Where I just just am letting the thing build stuff. What role should AI play for up and coming developers? It feels like the tools are eliminating the middle bit of developers. Like the tools are very, very useful for, the vibe coders, me down here. They seem very, very useful for senior guys who like know how to architect and manage teams. And they seem to be replacing the middle guys. And so the question is, how does somebody get from here up to there when like they never experienced the middle stuff? Does that make any sense?
It does.
Like how could I get to where you guys are without a lifetime of experiencing all of the writing of the code and the lessons of like poor architecture and whatever, right? How do you make that? How does any aspiring developer that's, trying to learn Python because, they got excited about it because of, AI, how do they make the leap into, the guy that can effectively orchestrate software development?
I think the answer to that is I think the answer to that is both really cool, but also probably like whatever. Like everybody said, I think the answer is AI. To be honest with you, and David kind of touched on that. Is that the capacity for a human to learn with this tool is we don't know the bounds of that yet, and so it requires discipline. Because it requires you kind of like turning the AI off, so to speak. And instead of being like, hey, do this for me, it's like, teach me how to do this. And that's exactly what happened to me that Saturday when I was I feel like I was down here at this level. And at the end of a single day, like I I leveled up, multiple times probably. But like the conversation with the AI was unlocking thoughts in my mind of how to accomplish these things, right? Because I was like, hey, I want to be able to repeat this process. Like, brainstorm with me how we could do this. You know what I mean? And so, like David said, AI is a really good mirror. And I found that to be really good with brainstorming, and it's really good with learning too. Because you can have it build an entire website. You can also have it teach you how to build an entire website. And for those people that get really curious about those things, it can teach you that. It could teach you how to manage that. It could teach you how to orchestrate that. They're essentially the entire corpus of human knowledge that exists on the internet, which is a lot of knowledge, is encompassed inside of an LLM. Like, we just need to direct it. But it knows, if you want to be a lawyer, the LLM knows what you need to know in order to be a lawyer. You know what I mean? If you want to be a Python programmer, the LLM knows what you need to know. And you can ask it how to do things. You can ask it how to study things, like create me a course plan for this. Like the possibilities, we don't know all the possibilities. But I know that someone that aggressively seeks to understand how to leverage AI in whatever it is that they're doing, they can learn a lot and they can progress really fast.
I would answer your question in a very pedestrian way, Sam, and just say, how does, just take AI out of the question. Like, take AI out of the picture for a second and say, hey, I want to achieve this effect in the world. How would you go about doing that? Well, you would talk to someone who has experience doing the thing you're trying to do. Like, literally. I'm working for Palium, which is an AI startup, and the two co-founders are decidedly non-technical. They're super smart, gifted in their own right, but they are not technical. And so what have they done? They've said, well, that doesn't, they haven't sat twiddling their thumbs saying, oh, I guess I can't do anything because I'm non-technical and I don't have 10,000 hours. They're not built that way. They're like, okay, well, I guess I'll figure that out. And what have they done? They've brought people, humans, into their sphere, and me being one of them, who have expertise, and said, hey, let's figure out, so how do we go about doing this? How would we do this? And what I'm just saying, to answer your question about how does someone level up, it'd be the very same thing, except for sometimes you bring in a human, and then sometimes you bring in an AI agent, Yeah. And you'd ask them, hey, in the future, suppose AI agents are good about, say, architecture, which I think can happen. I mean, the current trajectory is really tremendous. Just by saying AI is not good at architecture right now doesn't preclude also saying that like a year from now they might be very good at architecture. But in that case, then you'd bring it in and say like, okay, given these constraints, I'll give you an example. Recently, I was having a discussion with Claude about some architecture issues, and I asked it to like do some pros and cons analysis and came up with a recommendation. And then I said, look, what is the simplest thing that can possibly work? We're a startup. We're trying to, raise our first seed round. Like, that's the context you're working. As soon as I said that, it was like, oh, well, if that's the case, you don't need this, you don't need that, don't need that, don't need that. Like, it's self-edited. And then all of a sudden what fell out of the bottom of that was a very reasonable, like, rational plan. It just didn't have that context into it. And maybe it didn't have the, like, let's call it self-awareness to ask questions and say, well, before I ask this question, before I answer this, like, tell me a little bit about the context and what are the factors involved here. It's getting better at that. Claude Code does ask insightful questions more and more. And I think at a higher level, it will get better at saying, okay, the real question I need to ask here is this, because that's going to like have this cascading, like if I know the answer to this, then this whole tree of decisions goes away and I can focus on this. And, I can see that happening. I just think it's a tremendous, I understand where people are coming from. They're like, wow, you grew up and you have all this expertise. How do you operate in a world where you don't? Dude, there's so many things I don't have expertise in. And I'm still able to like operate in the world like I am. And I don't know a lot of things. Would I like to know everything? Yes, I would. But I just don't. And so the question is, are you just going to sit on your hands and say, woe is me, I can't like, or are you just going to say, well, I guess I got to figure out like, what are my resources? How can I answer the questions I need to answer? How do I solve the thing? And that is a problem of like learning in its like natural sense, because you're having, our dad would always say like learning is expectation failure. We have an expectation about how the world is, and then that fails and you're like, oh, that didn't work out right. I guess I need to construct a new understanding about the world to resolve the issue that just failed because my mental model was broken. And that seems to be very consistent. That feels like learning, and learning I think feels like happiness. And so I am like definitely on the techno optimist side of things. On the flip side, if someone is like set in their ways and they're like, I want to build like post frame buildings the rest of my life, I do not want to upskill, I do not want to learn a different way of operating in the world, dude, the world's a big place. You probably can make a go of it at that. Mm-hmm. But you're going to give up some things too. And so you just really got to think through the trade-offs involved.
This has been excellent.
Jason, it's so cool talking with you. It's super fun. It's like invigorating.
I love AI. So anyone that asks me about AI, they're going to get more than they asked for. So
well, this has been awesome. We really appreciate you taking the time. Do you have any other final words or thoughts that you'd like to share with us before we close up here?
Yeah, just as you were talking, and I was thinking more about this, like these people in the middle that Sam was talking about. I just want to say, like, just be curious. Like, be curious. That's what leads you to where you need to be. And when you're curious, like AI is just a great way to ask questions and to learn things. And I think if you do that, then you can end up where you want to go and not kind of in this weird middle place that, might not exist or whatnot. So yeah, just be curious, learn things.
Love it. That is a fitting ending to this long discussion. Sam, we have another long form interview in the book. So
awesome.
All right. Well, Jason, thank you so much.
And, yeah, it's been my pleasure.
Awesome. We'll talk to you soon.